call tonight's workshop session to order. Karen, instead of doing full roll call, can you just note roll for the agenda?
Sure.
Perfect. And just a quick item to note on the agenda, because we are missing a council member this evening, I'd like to move the agenda item number 8, the local sales tax option, off of tonight's agenda and pick it up at our next council meeting as a discussion item. I think it's a big enough topic that we should have everybody there for that conversation. And also we're very early in the process. And so there's not really a time sensitivity to continuing tonight. And so with council's approval, I would move that we push that to another agenda. Because we're in workshop format tonight, we don't formally adopt the agenda, but I'm just looking for some head nods or some thoughts on consent, I guess, to move that to our next meeting item. Any concerns on doing that? All right. I do know that we had a couple of citizen comments, and I think there was perhaps some social media chatter on this particular topic, so it has some interest. I would just note that we are incredibly early in the evaluation of what a sales tax could mean for Forest Lake. If this is a topic of concern for anybody who is watching, this is the very first step of consideration of part of our 10-year plan. We are considering many different projects and many different sources of revenue to fund those projects. If we were to continue down this path, it does actually require local referendum, and that is part of what council's education is on what is a local sales tax, how's it administered here in the state of Minnesota, what would it mean for potential sources of revenue for us as a city, and then what is the process if council wanted to continue down that path. And that's just where we are right now at the very beginning of this conversation. And so happy to continue that conversation at our next meeting when we've got all council members available. So with that, and with roll call being taken, our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. And could somebody display the flag, please? I invite everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the
republic
for which
it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
for all.
Our next item on our workshop agenda this evening is open forum. Karen, do we have anybody participating in open forum this evening or any written submissions you'd like to read?
Yeah, let me take a look here. I do have Suzanne and Pat Sullivan. So let me move them into the meeting.
Perfect. And just I'll wait until they're in. Good evening. Welcome to Open Forum. Glad you're able to join us this evening. Just a quick note around Open Forum. This is any stakeholders' opportunity to provide feedback to council on any topic of your choosing. Just a quick note, typically council does not respond. We're happy to receive feedback and hear feedback, and if there's follow-ups that are necessary, generally we'll direct staff to get back to you. But welcome this evening. We're glad you're here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to read a prepared statement that we put together.
Perfect.
My name is Suzanne Sullivan, and this is my husband, Pat. We purchased a vacant lot on North Shore Trail in 2014. And in 2016, we chose a local builder to build us our forever home. He submitted our plans and obtained proper permits prior to building. The home was completed in June of 2016. In the process of installing our grading and landscaping, our contractors brought in several loads of dirt, regraded, installed a swale, and seeded the area between us and our east neighbor to facilitate water flow from North Shore Trail toward the lake. In 2017, our builder agreed to install a French drain tile system to ensure our water runoff from our lot was being controlled. To be neighborly, we offered to install drain tile legs into our neighbor's yard that would connect to our drain tile system. The neighbor said absolutely not. We also wanted more dirt placed near the road, and we wanted drain tile system to extend all the way to the road. Both of these were denied by Donovan Hart. Since the fall, our water runoff is being controlled by our drain tile system. In October of 2018, a misdemeanor citation was delivered by a policeman on a Sunday to us at our home. Photos from the city noted that the area by the road on the neighbor's property needed addressed. This is the area that Donovan previously said could not be filled in 2017. November of 18, the builder met with Donovan Hart, and our builder agreed to add dirt, regrade, and seed by the road for the neighbors. In December of 18, our first of many court dates, we did not think to retain an attorney at that time. In 50 plus years of combined homeownership in 4 states and 7 towns, neither of us had ever had an issue with a neighbor or town. That winter of 18-19, the neighbor drove through the freshly graded, seeded area, creating ruts by their driveway and the road, which are still present today. In 2019, the grass filled in for the neighbor and their lot drains to our drain tile system. Our water is being controlled by our drain tile. We had court dates in April, June, August, and November of 2019. The neighbor flip-flopped on what they wanted done to their land. And in the fall of 19, the city and the neighbor decided that they wanted us to add drain tile legs that they had previously denied, but with no definition of success or finality. In November of 19, we hired an attorney because this is ridiculous, and we've gone above and beyond to help our neighbor already. In 2020, the neighbors drove over and parked cars, trailers, and boats in that area. How could they do this if there was actually still a drainage issue? The neighbor has grass and their lot drains. Any additional monies thrown at this is wasteful and unnecessary. Yet here we are going to trial on May 10th. The county prosecutor has told us on at least 3 occasions that there is no reason for this to be in criminal court. We are tax-paying citizens. We are paying for an attorney for a criminal trial. Forest Lakes taxpayers are paying for the prosecution against us. Shouldn't this be handled as a private civil matter between neighbors? If the neighbor feels that we are impacting their yard in some way, is this what the city of Forest Lake wants to do to its citizens? Why is this a priority for the city? We thought the city council should know what has been happening to us over the last 5 years. The goalposts were moved by Donovan Hart at every turn. We are struggling to understand how we continue to be responsible for a property that is not ours. Some questions to ponder. Why wasn't a grading and drainage plan required by the city before building? Why did Donovan Hart change the requirements from year to year? Why wouldn't Donovan meet with us when we requested in 2018? Is this really that important for the city to spend time and resources on? For something that we tried to remedy or wanted to remedy in 2017, but was squashed by the neighbor and by Donovan Hart. This has caused us hours upon hours of heartache, lost wages, meetings, court prep time, and has taken away from more important things like our son graduating from high school and our daughter pregnant with our first grandchild. We challenge you to drive down North Shore Trail and check the other yards and see that our neighbors is on par or even better than many. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Any other participants for open forum this evening?
Mayor Bain, I don't have anybody else waiting.
All right. With that, we will close open forum and we will move on to our next agenda. Oh, go ahead. I'm
sorry. I do. If she wants to speak, Cindy Lehman, she just popped in here. So hold on. There she is. Sorry about that.
Good evening, Cindy. We are in our open forum portion of our meeting this evening and wanted to give you an opportunity to speak if you wanted it. And you're on mute. Are you able to take yourself off mute?
Oh.
It's good.
Oh, you're back on mute. There.
Now am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. No, actually, I just sort of wanted to watch what was going on in the city council, and a question had come up about, you know, possibly there was a city tax that might be implemented. It was on Nextdoor. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about it, but I did get a lot of email back immediately sort of explaining where the process is. It's just beginning. You're just exploring the thought, and that was just what I was questioning. So, but I thought it would be, I don't even know what goes on during these meetings, so I thought it would be nice just to watch.
We're glad you're here, and you're welcome to stay. I don't know if you caught the comments at the beginning though, but we are moving this discussion item to a workshop session on our next meeting, which is next Monday at 7 p.m. So my apologies for the agenda flip-flop at the last minute. We don't have a council member here and want to have everybody available so everyone's hearing the same information. But you're welcome to stay for this meeting, and you're welcome to tune in next week when we do have that as an agenda item. And it is just a workshop session. This is, as you understand, just at the very beginning of a consideration of a local sales tax.
Oh, okay. Okay. So maybe next week would be better to listen.
That will be our discussion, correct?
Ah, okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Have a great evening. And you're welcome. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the workshop topics.
Okay.
Karen, any other open forum considerations this evening?
I don't have anybody left. No.
All right. With that, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 5, nuisance properties. And I believe Donovan and Chief Peterson are giving us an update and just walking us through tonight's discussion.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, I'd like to start this off. Rick and I discussed this a little bit beforehand, and I think he'll have time to chime in where his personal experience is valuable. And I'd like to, first of all, share with you some details of a memo prepared by the city attorney regarding nuisance abatement and the different flavors and some of the challenges that the city has for tools for abating nuisances. So with that, I'd like to share my screen and to show the kind of the first stage of every enforcement action after we received a complaint and visit the site or confirmed and otherwise that there is a compliance issue. We send a compliance letter. And this is, first of all, just to provide notice and within that letter, provide details of what city code is being violated, date the violation was observed, and then provide some information on how to get into compliance. I like to be really specific with this so that the owner has a sense of what the city is looking for, not just simply that they are in violation. And then finally, what will happen if they don't comply by the deadline that is set. And as a kind of non-written policy, we usually follow a 1 month deadline for first notice, 2 weeks for second notice, and then a final letter at that 6-week point from that initial date of the first letter. And I find oftentimes, not, I won't say often, haven't really taken statistics on this one, but the many times the educational approach is the best approach. And it's kind of nice to be able to assume that some people just don't understand what rules are there. For instance, many communities have or don't have rules for fence permits. City of Forest Lake does. So sometimes some people might, build a fence and then realize, oh, I made a mistake. And then we, follow up and they do go through the process and receive that permit. So sometimes it's simply educational. Those are the good ones. Those are the ones that are simple. And we don't need to any following actions. Then next, another type of nuisance that the city sometimes we have is when there's been like a fire damaged building or a building that's in such state of disrepair that it can be declared a hazardous building. And this is one where there does need to be a civil action taken, civil court suit and decision by a judge to abate this hazardous building nuisance. But it's, as the memo notes, there is a clear pathway to abatement and assessment remedies. And this is where, the cost of the abatement could be certified to the property owner, and, following that successful civil court judgment. So that one's, is pretty clear, and the city of Forest Lake has at times gone through this and declared, city council declared a building hazardous, and then follow through with that civil court proceeding. And I should also mention that these really do often do relate to public nuisances, which is defined in state statute as a condition which unreasonably annoys, injures, or endangers the safety, health, morals, comfort, or repose of any considerable number of members of the public. So there's a pretty clear definition of what a nuisance is. Obviously, there can be subjectivity to that, but there is clear language specified in the state statute. Next, we move toward the situations where after numerous letters, and all these do involve a long paper trail of where the city staff is sending in multiple occasions, different stages, and also I really do try to reach out and not just through letters, of course, but call the property owner or the person who's associated with the violation and find out if we can collaborate toward a solution. And many times that is the case where they may not like it or not understand that something has to be done, and we reach something more of a collaborative rather than coercive resolution. And finally, next we do have civil action, and this is where where the city prosecutor does file suit against the property owner, and that is a attempt to gain an order to abate the nuisance. And for instance, these are, cleaning up exterior junk, removing vehicles. And in this case, the court does have lots of options as far as, through judicial decisions to compel compliance with its orders, including granting the city access to abate. This is one that the city only rarely uses simply because of the cost and length of time involved. And this is one where council members may have heard of cases with nuisance properties. I'm sure you all have heard some residents complaining about different situations that why can't the city clean this up? Well, in some cases, the only option, the only tool, the real tool for a city to abate the nuisance is through the civil action, which takes months and many thousands of dollars of legal fees for the city to get a decision. And that's also having a successful decision. Many times, court judges rather maybe take sympathy on the property owner, or not give maybe the city the full judgment they'd seek, which would be simply to eliminate the nuisance, or even, of course, granting the right to access the property is also a big piece of this. So, whether the city uses this or not, it is a tool, but the city attorney's memo notes that the city should budget resources for triaging problem properties in the city because of that expense and time involved. Now, there's also, after attempts to both, inform the owner of the violation, offer, clear solutions, and there's really no collaboration, really just resistance by the homeowner, or just simply ignoring the letters, no communication, and nothing's done to improve the property. That's when I do refer the matter to the police. And the responding officer needs to go out there and judge for him or herself, is this a violation? Really, in some ways, the process starts over, because they have to, the officer, in writing a citation, it's a violation of the zoning code. It's a level that I'm generally dealing with, is a misdemeanor, and which is a criminal citation. And the officer will look at that, and from their judgment, can they, looking at the text of the code, is this a violation? And they look at it as, could I, in a court of law, stand by this? Will I vouch that indeed, bear witness that this is actually a violation? And that's the same sort of approach that I take. And that's why I'm really reluctant to refer this to the police for criminal action, because I want, and I understand the officer has to, without a doubt, see this as a violation. Right now, there are eight criminal citations for zoning code violations within the court criminal system. And this is, I've been with the city over over 6 years, and it's probably maybe only a dozen times where I have referred things to the police that have resulted in a citation. Sometimes the officer doesn't see a violation and kind of start over, start redocumenting, find maybe a different angle if the issue is not resolved. But I stress that this is a pretty rare occasion when we do refer it to to an officer for ticketing for that misdemeanor violation. Another part of this is when there's criminal court for some nuisance that relates to a violation of the criminal code. If something else going on in the house is going on that's resulting in junk in the yard, extra vehicles. It could be something related to car thefts, a chop shop, a meth lab, those sorts of things. And in the more extreme cases, I do approach Chief Peterson prior to my letter sending to find out if there's an independent investigation that will move speedier and actually result in more serious charges, where the misdemeanor zoning code violation is more of almost a kind of a petty occurrence. And so that's where I kind of veer away from being involved. But that is another part of this. And then finally, the city attorney's memo makes a conclusion that of course these are difficult, and there are limited pathways, and really the options involve a significant amount of time and cost. And really, and the best thing to do is to continue to work with property owners to avoid any of these tools that I've mentioned here. And I'll say that many times we are able to not have to use any of those tools, but you can see in some of the individual conversations I've had with council members that there aren't any real easy solutions. And I guess I'm providing some of this information for you. And I don't recall when we've had more of this cohesive kind of presentation like this, for you to understand when residents call you, that we're trying as much as we can to on their side, we're wearing the same jerseys here, but that offer try to ask for patience, in that the process does take time, and many times there is some resolution. But just because they don't see anything, the tow truck's coming to haul the vehicles away next week, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. But the process often is going on, and I like to be optimistic about it and understand that a lot of times we can come to a collaborative resolution. With that, happy to take any questions, and also if Chief Peterson, if you want to add anything from your vantage point, as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Donovan. I will add, you covered everything really well, but I will add that since the pandemic hit, the criminal cases have been prioritized by the Washington County courts, and many of the department issued citations that Donovan talked about, the 8 that he said are still outstanding. Those 8 were written in either 2019 or 2020, and they've been postponed since there's a significant backlog in the courts since the pandemic hit. So it may take months for them to get caught up. And I know the courts are hoping to start hearing some of these backlog cases in June of this year. So I know that a few city council members have been contacted by a couple of concerned residents that live next to some of these properties. And I did do some research and reached out to those residents and let them know that there is that backlog. So in their minds, they're thinking that we're not doing anything, but unfortunately it's stuck in the court system right now. But I will also be available for questions from you that you may have, and we'll go from there.
Donovan, a quick point of clarification or just further understanding. What determines the path on whether something's going to head down the track of civil action on the part of the city or criminal action? Is that the nature of the violation, or is there a different circumstance that would decide which path you follow? Or does one follow the other? Is it sequential, or what determines that path?
Well, I mean, the context is that I have not pushed for civil action in any nuisance thus far within the city. So
Okay.
it's kind of premature for me to say, but I believe there are a couple situations that might warrant that. We just haven't gone to that point yet, to really dedicating the resources. And I guess really what it comes down to is, just the severity of the threat to public health and safety. And, there's just that weighing that, cost versus benefits of the civil action. And, perhaps this conversation is something of a, as it offers the, kind of a set of announces. Well, I don't mean to forecast anything, but perhaps this conversation will be important, because then the staff will come forward, and I don't know if we would actually speak about it in a public setting, but we very well could come forward with civil actions in the future.
Is that one of the questions you have of us tonight on, are you looking for guidance from us on if you want us to have a more, I don't know if you would call it an expedited process, or if we want you to consider that more? Are you looking for that feedback tonight, or is it more of it hasn't happened, not because of resources or priorities, but more of we just haven't had a scenario that fits that definition?
Yeah, I think things are still evolving, so I won't say that we don't have that
Right.
situation that fits a definition. I would like to get some sense from council on whether you feel like resources should be applied to some of the properties, and these are, I'm not going to name the addresses, but I think there's some that are familiar to council members, and my sense of it, and this is kind of pre-COVID, so I don't know if legal representation cost changes, but something in the range of a year and 9 months to a year in time, and $30,000 is a decent guess on getting that to a court date. And I'm making a lot of generalizations there, but to give you some context for why the city has not pursued this thus far.
Yeah, that's helpful context. Council members, I jumped in with that question. What, kind of stepping back from that, questions you have of Donovan and Rick, either on, or Chief Peterson, either on the information presented or just the topic in general? I'll chime in. This is a challenging one. Anytime we have the city taking legal action against our own residents is always challenging. It's expensive. It's a long process. It's difficult. One of the and it's also difficult for both parties that are involved, both neighbors that are living next to a property that maybe doesn't meet our code compliance and is a challenge. And then also it's certainly not a fun process for the homeowner that is going through that experience, or the property owner. One of my aha moments, or things I didn't realize when I was new in council, is that these were the path for compliance and the path to ticket was a law enforcement action through a misdemeanor ticket, and that it went into the court system. I guess naturally that wasn't a path that I was, it wasn't intuitive to me. However, and so there's been some feedback I've received just from residents in general of, gosh, is this a good use of law enforcement? And I hear that feedback, but then also appreciate that is the channel to give us a independent third-party evaluator for resolution. Because I think ultimately that's what we need in this situation. Is we have tried, the city and the other party have tried to reach a common resolution, but we're at that point where you do need a third party to provide some judgment. And in our current process, that's a court of law and a judge that is serving in that function. And so although the law enforcement handing over the ticket is, I still think in my mind, a bit of an awkward mechanism, I can appreciate that is the channel to get this, this conflict where it needs to be for resolution. So I guess, in terms of overall feedback on, our enforcement practices, I understand that there's options where this could be potentially another member of city staff. We've talked about having, other kind of non-sworn police, personnel that might serve this function. I can see that might be a role for that. But ultimately, I think that I think we're at a spot when we get to this point of enforcement where we need a third party to weigh in. And I would encourage us to continue that path. And if that third party is a mediator or somebody that we could employ in the meantime, I'm open to that conversation. But I do think that we need whatever that mechanism is to get us to that third party is important, because again, through just these situations and what we witness it is a long timeline where city has attempted to come to an agreement for whatever reason that just hasn't been able to be achieved, and we do need that assistance to get there. So,
Mayor,
please.
Yeah, I'd like to add something else as a way of context. This is conversations I've had independently with Amanda and Pete, and involves something that we were hoping was going to be within this memo, which I did email to council members right before the meeting, and we didn't receive this until a couple hours before the meeting, and so we aren't able to offer more, have more follow-up conversation with them. But what I did learn earlier is that the City of Forest Lake status as a home rule city prohibits many other enforcement mechanisms that are available to charter cities. And, you know, if you dig into the past, you might have be aware of, there used to be some administrative ticketing done for nuisance within the city. The city, you know, does not have the power to do that now. You know, where basically a non-sworn officer can issue citations, and there actually be a process, administrative court, you know, run by the city. Not an option here. And the, you know, and we also saw it in the memo, you know, give us some other possible tools. So, you know, this is kind of the, you know, the raw facts of it is that, you know, as outlined in that memo, you know, civil and criminal court proceedings, and that's, you know, so a lot of this is meant to be kind of in a more informative conversation with council members, so that they can understand some of the things that staff deals with on a more day-to-day basis. And this, you know, we have, I've not come before council with agenda items related to these. You know, there are some things within the zoning code or the city code to involving abating nuisances, where the council could declare a property a nuisance, and maybe that could provide some extra leverage, and, you know, get someone's attention, or provide, you know, a public, you know, hold a public hearing and have the property owner come forward and explain themselves, you know, on why they think that, and maybe, you know, additional conversation. You know, this is long after, you know, the staff collaborative approach, you know, hasn't yielded any results. That's maybe something, maybe, you know, would council want to, you know, perhaps, you know, entertain some of these abatement issues? I mean, which, of course, draws council into it, but it might provide another forum for, you know, just for greater understanding with the homeowner and council.
Donovan, could you speak to that a little bit further? So an example of an abatement would be, say we had a property that had a house fire, and there was a significant amount of cleanup that still needed to happen to make that to make that a safe situation. So is the abatement that the city is going to pay for that and then put that cost on a property tax bill? Is that kind of the process that you're referring to?
That is one piece of it, and that is the voluntary abatement thing, which we have pursued but it involves a willing property owner, where the cost is certified, you know, to their property taxes, and it's really it's laid out, and that's not what I was just referring to, but no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is a tool, but it's somewhat rare that you have someone who is willing to, you know, partner with the city on that, because it truly is a partnership where the city's done it. They've hired the contractor, you know, set a budget, and it was agreed upon beforehand before work began. And then, you know, there was some significant cleanup of the property at that point. No, what I was referring to was just basically the act of council declaring a nuisance of a property, and it doesn't provide, you know, in itself any kind of enforcement, I don't know, any kind of punishment, or but it's more of a, you know, kind of getting more attention. I mean, putting more attention, more you know, understanding around it, so that council can understand what the nuisance is. It may be, you know, maybe as a forum for neighbors to say this is a bad situation and it should be cleaned up. I'm kind of grasping for things that are alternatives to the criminal and civil actions that are outlined in the city attorney's memo.
Mayor Bain, I have a question for Donovan.
Please.
But You might have just answered it though. My question was, I was just trying to get some clarity around the conversation of the purpose of discussing it as we're looking at ways that are, or other layers to show the severity, whatever the issue is, the importance of it without it getting to court. We're looking for more cost-effective ways. Is that, I guess I feel like I'm missing some of the content.
Yeah, well, it's well, my struggle here is that it doesn't lead directly to the property being cleaned up. It's a discussion. It can be part of documenting the issue for a future civil action, but it doesn't. I mean, council can't say, with any sort of, muscle behind the order, thou shalt clean up the apartment. I mean, you can say it, but there's no legal muscle behind that. And that's, so, but, and if we look in the record, I can look at where the community development director did bring forward, on the, put them on regular agenda items as, a request to declare a property a nuisance within the city of Forest Lake. But it doesn't have the same strength as a criminal or civil court action.
And maybe Mayor Bain, have another question, follow up.
Please, yeah, please.
What do other charter or cities similar to us, what do they do? Do we know that, or what their process is if it's?
Yeah, so the charter cities do have, to my understanding, they do have that administrative ticketing option. Forest Lake is a home rule city, and we do not have that option. So, and I was hoping to get in the memo, because one reason it took a little while to get before you is that Amanda was looking for, other options, consulting, other Levander, Gillen and Miller, attorneys representing other municipalities for, what's just some potential pathways. And the memo really just outlined the ones that I, put forth in that PowerPoint.
Thank you.
And anyone else with questions, feel free to jump in. Is there ever, is it an option to employ the use of a mediator somehow considering the any ticketing matter? Is that an option that would be available, or I don't know, because these head down the path on criminal code, I'm not sure of how the use of mediators how that works, right? That's kind of
I would
usually complementary.
Yeah, I would think the use of a mediator would be neighbor to neighbor mediator more than city to resident neighbor. Right. Often a lot of these complaints do spring out of a neighbor to neighbor complaint. And I believe that if we were to try to diverge that to a mediator, that could be something to be done to see if they can come to some resolution. I'm not sure how effective that would be with the city versus a citizen. It almost, like Donovan said earlier, if it goes to city council, if we bring it to, that's kind of almost a third, that's almost a mediator between staff and the resident. So right. I'm not sure a mediator would work well with the city doing that.
Right. So one of my concerns on an alternative path from where we are today is we are such a small staff and such a small community of only 5 council members. And again, to get the outside perspective of a third party, I think is incredibly valuable. And if the best qualified outside perspective is the court system, that seems to be the path that Minnesota state law wants us to follow as related to what's allowed as a charter, what we're allowed to do as I said charter city, I meant statutory city, of the path for these types of questions. Because even if we were to have something to, that would require council action, again, because these typically tend to be very long-term situations and we've got a small staff and a small community, typically council's had some interaction along the way of either, answered some questions or has fielded some emails from either the resident themselves or neighbors. So by the time we get to, future council action, council's not really independent, and also doesn't have the perspective of what's reasonable for other communities. And I think that's one of the things that we do get from having, the Washington County court system be the ultimate arbitrator of these disputes is Forest Lake reasonable in context with what Stillwater and Woodbury and our neighbors in Hugo are doing? And I think that's valuable context. It is a bit, again, clunky to me that we've got, from the officer delivering that ticket. But again, within our code, that is a misdemeanor item that, again, based on state law, I'm just not seeing an obvious path that gives us another way to enforce these things. So then I kind of go back to, the front loading of, have we done everything up front to prevent us from having to get to that spot? And if there is some opportunity to have, a mediated service before we get to that point, I'd be open to that evaluation. I'm just not sure what's available or what that looks like.
Again, just a point of information is that I agree it's difficult to walk up to a house with a policeman and give a ticket. In these circumstances, also the city code does allow city council to appoint other officers to deliver these types of citations. We would just have to determine who that would be. And right now there isn't anybody else really. I mean, there's the police and that's about it. If we had, like we mentioned earlier, a CSO, or we somehow had some kind of a property maintenance inspector or enforcement officer for property, the city council could allow them to do that. But right now that's our only avenue.
Also, I'd like to also add that to give a little more insight into how the process works. Well, first of all, the first, second, and final letter process that I outlined, which minimum of 6 weeks between the first and final letters, that's not specified in our code. That's something that I've taken from just practice and what I think is reasonable. And actually sometimes it's shortened to 2 weeks for simply a simple vehicle violation or trailer in the wrong place maybe. But the code doesn't specify that. I mean, I could get a complaint, go the next day, find the violation and then refer to the police department. So there is flexibility built into that, just that kind of unwritten policy that I follow with the enforcement letters. Also, once it's referred to the police officer, who then, tickets, if there's a ticket written, there's a series of pretrial hearings where the city prosecutor meets with the property owner. And I'm giving clear direction to Mike Welsh, the city prosecutor, along the way, like what does compliance look like? So that, because he's in the midst of negotiation, he doesn't want to take these to a judge. He says that, and this is, he's not here tonight, and so I have to, speak a little for him. And he says that judges who deal with all the criminal cases, and this is kind of what Rick was referring to. This is, I'm Chief Peterson. I mean, this is not a priority for them, and they're dealing with much more severe criminal violations. And a junkie yard is like a little mosquito buzzing in their ear, figuratively. So Mike doesn't want to take these to the court. So we do have, series of pretrial hearings where even after that ticketing has occurred, it's the last one to come before a court. It was 2 years from that ticketing time, and multiple pretrial hearings in an attempt to educate the homeowner, or the property owner, this is what compliance look like. And prior to these hearings, Michael emailed me and say, it happened today. He said, okay, there's a pretrial hearing tomorrow. What's the property look like? And I could say, well, it's, in this case, no compliance, so so Mike goes in with the most current information to telling the homeowner, what are you going to do? I mean, we know that this is ongoing, and in this case, I really do, I do feel like in this case, when it's in this kind of pre-trial period, the property owner has a lot of power. They have a lot of control in the situation because they can make it go away if they just meet the requirements of the code. And so and that gives you a little more setting that, there's a lot of time that's within this and flexibility, and it doesn't, even after the ticketing, it doesn't simply go to before a judge.
Thank you, Donovan. That's helpful. Council, other questions or points of feedback on this topic tonight? Again, primary purpose being just overall education on what the process looks like and some opportunities for input if there is some motivation to do something different from a resource standpoint. And then obviously understanding what our options are allowed under the law.
Sure.
Councilmember Husnick, yeah, please.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I mean, it's just too bad that code violations can get so bad they have to involve the police. I mean, that's an awkward situation. But I guess we gotta do something, and because it affects property values and all sorts of issues and health, safety, and welfare. So just a quick comment on my part. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Donovan or Patrick, anything further? And Chief Peterson, anything further you're looking for from council at this time?
I don't believe so. I think we just have to continue to work through this and see if there's any new ideas or different ways to approach this. And we'll investigate mediation on a little bit and see where that takes us. But for now, we really still only have those two avenues, civil court or criminal court. So
yeah. And challenging. And in the meantime, for residents that are living next to a situation and are frustrated, every week I hear an email or see an email that is, why aren't you doing anything? And because there gets to be a spot where we are waiting for that resolution, and it looks like there's no enforcement, although there is active enforcement, and that's just challenging for everybody. All right, we are going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the FLA facility use agreement. And Jamie, I think you're walking us through this.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Before you tonight, you have a draft facility use agreement between the City of Forest Lake and the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association. And over the last month or so, the city and FLA have been working together on contract negotiations for this agreement. And last Tuesday, the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission held a workshop as noted. So we had city representation and representatives from FLA present, which was Al Hauge and Paul Kozak. And in the workshop last Tuesday, the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, we went through each section of this agreement in great detail, had really good collaboration between both the Parks Commission and FLA, providing feedback and comments. And as a result of that meeting, what you see here is a final draft, is what I'd like to call it, that has been acceptable to both city staff and FLA thus far. So this is presented here as a workshop tonight for City Council to ask any questions, provide any feedback, and get any answers, or answer any questions that you guys have before we bring this back to Parks Commission for a final approval. So again, if you have any questions right now, I guess is the opportunity, and staff's just looking for any final feedback from council. With that, to council.
Mayor Bain, I just have one question.
Please.
And Jamie, you're probably going to laugh at it, but what I hear a lot when I'm at the Fenway, or not the Fenway, I'm sorry, at the FLA meetings is ag lime. I now know what ag lime is. Ag lime, yes. And can you just, is it covered in here under city responsibilities or association responsibilities? I know it says, what page it is, but provide all athletic complex maintenance, including grass cutting, trimming, blowing, weed control, fertilization, aerating, and irrigation. Is ag lime included in there? Only because I need to be able to point this out.
That's a good question. Not to that level of specificity.
Okay.
Egg lime is not called out, but FLA did provide a lot of comments and feedback, and they're comfortable with what where we're at with this. Let me just get to the right page here. There is a component. We did have a conversation with FLA about current maintenance needs, and egg lime did come up of we need some egg lime. So there's language in here for any maintenance needs and requests that they would send a written notice to the city's public works department for any of those safety and maintenance items. And that was acceptable to FLA. I'm just looking at the agreement to find that page.
Okay. Thank you.
It's number 8 in the contract, repairs, maintenance, and cleanup. If there's any, association shall submit a written notice to the city's public works department to notify city of any needed repairs or maintenance. And so we agree that within there would be providing egg lime for the sidelines or anything of that nature.
That is perfect, and I appreciate you working that out with them. And it's nice to know where that is, and there's a process. So, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
But thank you for all your work on this. I know it was a process, and thank you and your Parks, Lakes, and Trails.
And thanks to FLA, because I think they had some really great feedback and collaboration in this process over the last couple of weeks, especially as we were working through the final, language of the contract. So they were really helpful in collaborating with that. So
that's great to hear.
A question so this has been an evolution of conversation, and we started with a contract and then pulled back from a contract, and we were just going to have a fee schedule, and now we're back to a facility use agreement. I see, and if I'm reading this right, that the planned term for the facility use agreement is the end of 2021. Help me look around the corner a little bit. Is this the long-term plan that we are going to have an annual facility use agreement, or is this a bridge plan that moves us from our previous structure into a new structure that maybe we're just not ready for yet? What does 2022 look like?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think this is more of the second option of this is a bridge as we transition. I think there's still a lot of unknowns going into 2021. And that's the reason for a one-year term, because we might go into this year and transition some of these items and realize we need to make some modifications to an agreement, or maybe there's a better way to operate. So I do think this provides a good stepping stone that we can transition smoothly, that really the FLA is maintaining the priority use of the fields as they have in the past. And really it's just transitioning and seeing in 2021 how things operate, and it gives us the opportunity to evaluate and potentially make some adjustments and tweaks as needed for 2022.
That's helpful. And so 2022 has a bit of a kind of a question mark on what specifically does that look like, and I can appreciate that there's a lot of unknowns. We have previously had a Fenway Advisory Board to specifically address Fenway and the relationship with FLA, and we've recognized that since that is they no longer have exclusive use, that it's a broader use, that we should have a facilities advisory board. Is there a recommendation on the part of staff on should we continue specifically a Fenway advisory just to facilitate this relationship and kind of make sure we're all staying on the same page, or are we ready to have more of a broader facility use, which would include, Castlewood Senior Center? It's I'm just how do we, between this signing this agreement and next year, make sure that we've got the right input so that we're ready, kind of all on the same page for next year's agreement?
Yeah, no, another good question. And I think from a staff perspective, I think shifting this year to that the facilities committee, where it's more, obviously strong FLA representation, but potentially some other user groups in the community that will address our facilities at large. I think that's a good transition this year. And I think getting input from, collecting the data this year and having that input, I think is an important part to make some of those decisions for 2022. So I think it makes sense to really transition this year. And we've had some conversations of getting a facilities committee together so we can get some input from the sports teams and other user groups of the field. So I would recommend we start that transition this year.
That's great feedback. Other questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Valento, absolutely.
Since the city isn't doing a fee schedule with FLA, are they still planning on talking about a fee schedule for residents like renting a baseball field?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that. Because this agreement outlines a permit fee schedule with FLA specifically, and it's included in the context of this agreement, we will still be bringing back to the city council resident, non-resident rate for renting at Fenway Fields. It did kind of get tabled as we were working through this process. So that will be coming up again to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. I believe tomorrow we have our meeting and hope to address it there and then continue that process with council. Obviously it's an ordinance update, which requires the 10 days public notice and all of that. So now that we've got clarity on an agreement on our fee FLA specifically, that will come back to city council.
And then in this agreement, it says that the city will know FLA's schedule. So since that discussion of residents renting fields, will the city website be updated to show residents when FLA is using fields, everything?
Yes. Yes, we will update our city website. We're working on a tentative timeline right now of May 1st. We want to make sure that we're getting all of the schedules in from FLA and really giving them that opportunity. So it's a loose deadline, but around May 1st, once we have everything from FLA, we will have our website updated and then the field schedule on our website with all the FLA activities. And then we can open it up to the public if they wanted to reserve the fields for something else. So for example, I do have a group that is on a current temporary hold. They do want to have a graduation party at Fenway and use a field for that, for a baseball player at the end of June. So just, working through that process as we transition to, give FLA the priority to get their schedules into the city. And then if we have any openings from there, if somebody else is looking to inquire, we can work with them on that and would have a fee schedule approved for that as well.
And then a minor comment on page paragraph 8, it says excessive cleanup costs, and I am completely unfamiliar with this, I guess, agreement and the relationship we have with FLA, but to me that seems like a super vague term. Just something I wanted to point out.
Thank you. Can you repeat what page number you were on just so I can reference that?
Page 6, paragraph 8.
Okay. Thank you. That is a good point, and I will verify again with the city attorney because I believe FLA asked a similar question to clarify what that would be. And so we did add damage does not include ordinary wear and tear on the field. So we'll just make sure that that's addressed and that there's clarity on that, but that does read a little vague, but we'll make sure that is acceptable and clear to both parties.
And one last comment.
Sure, no.
Just to ask the attorneys if there should be a severability clause within the agreement.
Okay, I will verify with them. We do have, I think just the termination clause right now, termination of the agreement, but I can verify with them if that would be needed as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I appreciate all of the work. I know Parks, Lakes, and Trails has put a ton of time into this, and Jamie, I know you've put a ton of time into this as well, and as has FLA. There's just been this has been a lot of work for everybody, so I appreciate getting everyone to this point. One of the concerns that had come up during the conversation were concerns of individual sports teams, and I know council had heard some feedback from some of the individual sports associations within FLA. Now that we are at this point with the contract, is there any remaining, do we feel like there's any remaining kind of unaddressed concerns out there, or where are the sports teams in their understanding of this? And I know we can't speak entirely for FLA, but do we have any concern that there's significant items that are still outstanding?
Yeah, from my understanding, so this agreement is between the city of Forest Lake and FLA directly. So payment will be due from FLA. So the individual sports member teams will have to, probably pay FLA, and then FLA will write the check to the city for the amounts that are due. We have language in here that says that the city will make determination if fields can be used or not due to weather or any other reasons. And we will notify FLA. and that it's FLA's responsibility to notify the different sports teams and within their association. So this is with the city and FLA, and I feel like I'm not aware of any other concerns on the individual sports teams. So really FLA will continue to operate with baseball, fast pitch, lacrosse, and football as they have, communicating with them directly. And one way with this, so the city in this agreement, as it's outlined, is we're providing the fields, and we have our list of responsibilities, but you'll see under number 5, association responsibility, they're still doing the field prep. So as we're transitioning, I'm starting to get some schedules in. So it's an email to myself and Al Hauge with FLA, so that we both have the information so that we can make sure we have it for our scheduling perspective, but then they also know in addition for the field prep component. But FLA will continue to communicate directly with individual sports teams.
My internet crashed. I am sorry, everybody. I'm back now. Sorry to miss the last part of that conversation.
Did you want me to quick recap? I don't know what you caught, but.
No, I think I was just asking about the other sports teams, and I heard most of your explanation, so I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Council members, other questions you might have at this time, or before this would come back to us for final approval?
I'm glad we got it in writing. Finally.
Yeah.
Very specific. And thanks a million, Jamie, for getting this thing done.
You're welcome.
Agree. All right. Jamie or Patrick, anything further you need from council on this topic?
I think I'm good on my end. I'm just going to check on the couple comments from Councilmember Valento, and other than that, if everyone else seems comfortable, then we'll make those adjustments, and I'm good on my end.
Excellent. Council, I'm on my phone, so I'm not seeing it, everybody. So if you have anything further, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we will move on to our update on park events, which is also Jamie.
That is. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. So I just prepared a few slides. I think that will be pretty quick and easy to go through to just kind of explain what we're working on here. So can everyone see that okay? Community events update?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just take a couple minutes to go through community events just to let you know kind of where we're at with the state of Minnesota from a restriction standpoint, and then just a couple of things that the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission have planned, or some decisions that we've come up with so far. So with that being said, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we still are operating under state of Minnesota Executive Order, the 21-11. So I just included a little brief recap of what that means for us for outdoor events. So just effective April 1st, you can have outdoor events with over 500 people, which you can actually have more. It really depends on the capacity of your venue. So we would be the second bullet point for our community events, non-seated outdoor venues. And it talks about your capacity limits. They do have a handy venue occupancy calculator. So when you click that link, it brings you to a website from the state of Minnesota. And basically you just enter in your square footage of your outdoor venue space, and it tells you how many people you can have. So there's a couple guidelines. So we do have some capacity restrictions, but for what we're looking to do, or what we can do, we would be able to, given the capacity guidelines with the state of Minnesota right now. So with that being said, we have the Spring Fling plan for Saturday, May 1st. And this will be at the Forest Lake City Center from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So a pretty short event. And it's going to have activities similar to 2019. And the reason for this is we feel that we can offer these events safely in compliance with capacity and other restrictions. There's a lot of room to spread out. A lot of the activities are pretty simple in the fact that, you can spread out, you can maintain social distancing. And a lot of the activities are things that you're not going to spend your whole 3 hours there. We saw in 2019, people kind of come and go for this event. They checked everything out, and then within 30 to 40 minutes, that was enough time, and then they left the event. But it was a very well-received event. We plan on doing some to-go snacks, so we don't have on-site food consumption, some craft kits to go. So we're kind of scaling back a little bit. We will have some crafts on site, but we're gonna only allow 4 people per table and sanitize between users and things like that. So we do have this on the radar for Saturday, May 1st. So this will be our first community event during the COVID-19 situation, but I feel it's something that we can do safely with hand sanitizers and socially distancing and keeping everyone, you know, within capacity. I'm just going to go over a brief recap on, you know, when we talk about Arts in the Park, there are a lot of decisions to think about. Arts in the Park is a really big event with usually the farmers market, vendors, food trucks, and a concert. And so I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of information that I found from research to just give you an understanding of what we're going to do this year and why. So just like last year, we had our farmers market. It was the only really community event that we offered in 2020 due to the pandemic. And a lot of that was because farmers markets were considered essential services. So you have exclusions in the governor's orders. So similarly this year, a basic farmers market where your customers can just come and shop and get their food. You don't have on-site food consumption. You don't have any capacity restrictions that you have to worry about. In addition to that, you don't have to wear masks. You just have to maintain social distancing and make sure you have hand sanitizers or a hand washing station. So farmers market is fairly easy to do. We also can add craft vendors back to our event and our Power of Produce program. And here's just a little guide on spacing out the vendor booths. So when I saw this research, I felt like that's a pretty comfortable thing that we can manage downtown at Lakeside Memorial Park and be safe and compliant with that. If you now take your farmers market and you add in the entertainment component, we would now be considered a venue. So venues, here's, you know, this kind of goes into all the restrictions we'd have to follow. So masks would be required. We'd have to make sure we are compliant with capacity limits. If we do on-site food consumption with food trucks, you have to follow all the restaurant guidelines, which I listed here. And then when you have the live music, these are fairly easy for compliance, but just keeping distance between the performers and the patrons. So not very difficult there, but you know, when you put everything together, like our normal Arts in the Park, you're looking at a lot of guidelines, restrictions, and things to follow to be compliant. So with that being said, last Tuesday, we talked about this at our workshop and I presented a recommendation that we split the activities into 2 nights this week so that we can, from a staff and resources perspective, manage the logistics of remaining compliant. And then also just from a health and safety perspective that we can ensure that people can come down to the park and be comfortable and safe and, but yet still offer these events this summer. So it's kind of a stepping stone to hopefully getting back to normal next year. So with that being said, we are looking at the farmers market with additional vendors this year back at Lakeside Memorial Park from 5 to 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. And I kind of just list a few of the different things that you can read over here, but everything is very doable from a compliance standpoint. And then moving the concert series to Thursdays from 6:30 to 8:30. And that will be more of an environment where you basically come to the concert and you're sitting down to watch the concert. There won't be so much walking around and eating food and traveling throughout the park. That becomes really difficult. You know, on an average night, we can see 500 to 1,000 people. So it's pretty difficult. I think it'd be very difficult to manage those capacity restrictions. And then we're not going to start with food trucks until some of those executive orders might change. It's really easy to add that at a later time, but then we don't have to worry about restaurant guidelines and seating people at tables and things like that. So just lastly, my last slide here, just some benefits. I know everyone missed being downtown last year, but it was really difficult to plan an event during a global pandemic when you could have 10 people together. So we just needed the extra space. So we'll be back downtown. We get to have vendors participate again. Concerts can be back in the park. It also encourages downtown activity more than 1 night a week. And just lastly, I think the guidelines and restrictions to follow are manageable from a staff and resources standpoint and that we would be compliant. So that is my update for the community events. I'm gonna stop my screen share here. So if you have any questions, I guess just tonight I wanted to at least let you know, we're kind of taking some steps back to some community events, but to do so safely. I think it's important for the community to have that opportunity to get together in some capacity. And I feel like this would be a good happy medium to offer to the community this year. So with that, open to any questions, comments, feedback, direction to staff at this time.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, what questions or feedback do we have? I'll just say it's great to see a plan, and thank you for navigating the challenges of, what's the tipping point for having to meet restaurant guidelines. And I can imagine that that is incredibly challenging with third-party vendors in particular at a park. And so this seems to be a little bit best of both worlds of being able to do farmers market and also still have entertainment. So in a COVID where things have been so restrictive, I'm just happy to see some things on the calendar. And if we're pulling people downtown 2 nights a week, that's an even nice, it's double coverage. So that's nice as well.
I guess I just have one question of council. I'll be moving forward with final plans on this. Is there any other time that you'd like to see this back for council review, or comfortable, I guess, consensus from staff to continue moving forward as planned and don't need any form, additional review at this time?
Move forward, in my opinion.
Okay.
I would agree. I'm seeing heads nodding here. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Move forward. Correct. I know it is not an event that is directly that the city manages, but I would be remiss in not asking about 4th of July. I know the Legion has started conversations about their 4th of July planning. And so just point of clarification for anyone watching that is a Legion-led event. That said, is there anything that has been decided that is known that is worth sharing tonight, or are we still in waiting mode to see what those plans look like? And I know Chief Peterson has been a liaison as well. So anything to add, or are we in a wait and see pattern?
Mara, the fireworks are on for sure, I guess. I'm not 100% positive about any kind of a parade this year, but I'll let you know as soon as I can find out.
Yeah, the word we have is that there probably will be a parade. It may not be as large as past years, and as many events as they can get together, depending on where the governor's order is, knowing that they may have to cancel it all
at the last minute.
So they're planning full board to go and see what they can get under their belts.
I did see some fundraising events, and just a quick note to the community: if we want to see these activities happen, let's participate in those fundraising events, which themselves are fun. But I know that this costs the Legion a fair amount of money, so I look forward to promoting those events as well.
Yeah, and then the only other thing, obviously the fireworks downtown bring a lot of people to the park, and I have some things pending, or need to make some decisions. Haven't looked at it yet, but if we're going to continue the entertainment like we've done in the past with music in the park and allowing for people in the park, I think that's just something staff hasn't really discussed yet, but need to look into that and figure out where we're going to go.
Yep.
Understood. Thank you. Other questions related to overall park events or any other updates in general? That we are at the end of our planned agenda this evening.
I'll just mention one more to tie into this. The city is working. I met with the school's community education department in December and just launched some activities in the park: yoga, Zumba, kids crafts, different programs in partnership with community education. Those went live for registration on April 15th. Those are available to Forest Lake residents only. And it was a way to partner together and encourage people to get out in the parks and outside to enjoy some structured recreational activities. So we're really looking forward to that partnership this year, which is something new that we're doing. So
excellent. And is that registration on the community ed website, Forest Lake Area Schools community ed website?
It will, yes, it is on there. And I also will have that special link on our city's Facebook and website this week as well.
That's terrific. Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Any other updates for council this evening? We have our next regular meeting next Monday at 7 p.m. And then just a quick reminder that we do have the downtown committee is doing their walkabout for the EDA starting at 5:30. And if anyone from council is interested in participating in that, you are welcome. It will be noticed as a quorum of council could be present. And so we'd love to see you, and we'll work through timing of that so that you have plenty of time to get where you need to be for our council meeting at 7. All right, with that being the end of our planned agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Oh.
We have a motion from Councilmember Husnick, and was that a second from Councilmember Valento? Perfect. Karen, could we have a roll call for adjournment, please?
Councilmember Husnick?
Aye.
Councilmember Munson?
Aye.
Councilmember Valento?
Aye.
Mayor Bain?
Aye. And we're adjourned this evening. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.